The neon lights of Itaewon buzzed faintly above, painting the streets of Seoul in dizzying shades of red and blue. The night smelled of cigarette smoke, spilled beer, and desperation, the kind of air Chinaza Okoye had grown used to since she arrived in Korea 6 months ago. Her sneakers slapped against the pavement as she hurried down the narrow alley, carrying a heavy plastic bag of leftover bread rolls she had begged off the bakery, where she cleaned after hours. The streets were cruel to those who didn't belong, and Chinaza, with her caramel skin and tired eyes, knew she was nothing but a shadow in this foreign land. Her stomach growled, but she kept walking. She had to make it to her cramped apartment before the last bus left the district. Everyone mattered, and wasting money on a taxi was impossible. Halfway through the alley, she froze. Voices.
Low.
Dangerous. Chinaza pressed herself against the cold brick wall. A sleek black car was parked by the dumpsters, its tinted windows reflecting the neon haze. Around it stood 4 men in dark suits, their broad shoulders blocking the path. And in the middle of them stood a man who looked nothing like the rest. He wasn't dressed in the standard black uniform, but in a tailored charcoal coat that caught the dim light. His posture was commanding, his presence sharp like a blade unsheathed. The cigarette between his lips glowed briefly, and when he exhaled, the smoke curled around his chiseled face, revealing piercing dark eyes. Kang Min-ho. Chinaza didn't know his name yet, but the city did. In hushed tones, in fearful whispers, they called him the Tiger of Seoul, the ruthless boss of one of the most powerful mafia syndicates. She shouldn't have seen this. Her pulse quickened. She turned to retreat, but her bag of bread slipped, hitting the ground with a loud thud. All 5 heads snapped toward her. Chinaza's heart nearly leapt out of her chest. She crouched instinctively, fumbling to gather the fallen rolls, muttering under her breath, "No, no, no." A pair of polished shoes stopped right in front of her. She froze. Slowly, she raised her gaze, and her breath caught. Up close, Kang Min-ho was devastating. Sharp jawline, midnight black hair swept back neatly, eyes so cold they could freeze rivers. He looked down at her as if she were nothing more than an insect crawling in his path. "Who are you?" His voice was deep, laced with danger. Korean, clipped, and precise. Chinaza swallowed hard, clutching the bread to her chest. I didn't see anything." Her accent was thick, her voice trembling. One of the suited men reached for his gun. "No," she blurted, panic spilling out. "Please, I don't know you. I'm going home." Min-ho raised a hand, stopping his man. His eyes stayed locked on hers, searching, calculating. She could feel his gaze slicing through her, weighing her worth, deciding if she deserved to breathe another second. Finally, he tilted his head, exhaling smoke. Wrong place. Wrong time. Her legs shook. She thought this was it, that her mother's only daughter would die in a Seoul alley, nameless and forgotten. But then he turned. "Let her go," he muttered, flicking his cigarette to the ground. "She's nothing." Relief flooded Chinaza's chest. She stumbled backward, whispering a shaky thank you before darting off into the night, clutching the bread as though it were her life. She didn't stop running until she reached her shabby one-room apartment on the city's edge. She collapsed against the door, tears stinging her eyes. She had seen something she wasn't supposed to. Men like him didn't spare witnesses. Why had he? Min-ho watched her flee, her hurried steps echoing into the distance. Something about her lingered. The fear in her eyes had been raw, but underneath it, there had been fire, stubborn, unyielding, unlike the polished women who usually hovered around him for money and power. "She's just a street rat," one of his men muttered. "We should have silenced her." Min-ho's lips curved into a faint, humorless smirk. "If she talks, she dies. If she doesn't, she'll disappear on her own. Seoul eats the poor alive." He turned back to the car, but in the back of his mind, an image of her face burned, refusing to fade. The next morning, Chinaza dragged herself to another shift. She worked as a part-time cleaner in a high-end nightclub, a place that reeked of wealth she could never touch. She scrubbed floors, polished glasses, and tried to ignore the way patrons looked at her as if she were invisible. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. As she bent down to pick up a broken bottle near the VIP section, the sound of polished shoes echoed behind her. The room seemed to still. The employee stiffened. Her blood ran cold. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Minho. His presence was suffocating. He moved past the trembling staff, eyes sweeping the room with quiet authority until they landed on her. Recognition flickered. Chinaza quickly looked away, pretending to focus on the shards of glass. Maybe if she stayed small, invisible. You. The single word snapped through the air like a whip. Slowly, she lifted her gaze. Minho stood before her again, towering, unreadable. The corners of his mouth curved slightly, though his eyes remained ice. Fate has a strange sense of humor, he said, voice low. Didn't I tell you to stay out of my path? Her throat tightened. I work here. I didn't know. He studied her silently for a moment, then leaned closer. His scent was a mix of expensive cologne and smoke, dangerous yet intoxicating. Then perhaps, he murmured, you were meant to cross it. Her heart pounded so hard, she thought he could hear it. And in that moment, she knew her life was about to spiral into a world she had no business entering. The nightclub was a temple of excess, golden lights dripping from chandeliers, velvet curtains suffocating the walls, and music that pulsed like a heartbeat through the dark. Chinaza hated it. She moved between tables with a mop, trying to disappear into the shadows. If she could finish her shift without another run-in with him, she would be safe. Or at least, that's what she told herself. But safety was an illusion when Kong Minho existed in the same building. From the corner of her eye, she saw him seated in the VIP lounge. He didn't blend in, he commanded. Surrounded by suited men and bottles of the finest liquor, he radiated the kind of power that made the entire room orbit around him. Patrons lowered their voices in his presence. Waitresses trembled when serving his table. Chinaza scrubbed harder, willing herself invisible. "Yah," one of the managers barked. "You, come here." She startled, nearly dropping the mop. The manager pointed toward the VIP section. "The boss wants a fresh drink. Move." Her stomach dropped. The boss. Her feet felt heavy as she carried a silver tray to the lounge. The men's laughter was sharp, cutting, the kind that wasn't joy, but warning. She set the bottle of whiskey on the table, eyes fixed on the polished wood. Then she felt it. His gaze. "Lift your head," Minho's voice commanded. Slowly, Chinaza obeyed. His eyes locked onto hers, dark and unreadable, as though peeling her apart layer by layer. He didn't blink. He didn't smile. He just studied her. "You were in the alley last night," one of his men said suddenly, recognition dawning. The man's tone dripped with menace. "Boss, she shouldn't." Silence. Minho's voice was calm, but it sliced sharper than any blade. The man shut his mouth instantly. He leaned back in his seat, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Interesting. Out of all the places in Seoul, you end up working under my roof." "It's just a job," Chinaza stammered, gripping the tray tighter. "Jobs are choices. Choices reveal character." His lips curved faintly, though his eyes remained cold. "Tell me, what kind of woman scrubs floors in a place like this?" Her pride bristled, but fear held her tongue. Still, something inside her refused to bow completely. "The kind who doesn't have the luxury of choices," she said quietly. A dangerous silence followed. His men shifted uncomfortably, waiting for his wrath. But instead of anger, a smirk tugged at Minho's mouth. Bold. Her heart thudded. She wanted to disappear, but his gaze pinned her in place like prey caught in a predator's sight. "Come closer," he ordered. She hesitated. "I won't repeat myself." With trembling steps, she approached the table until she stood directly before him. The scent of his cologne, smoky, rich, wrapped around her. He set his glass down, leaning forward. "What's your name?" Her lips parted. "Chinaza." His tongue rolled over the unfamiliar syllables, slow, deliberate. "Chinazier." He tested it like a weapon, then leaned back again. Different. Unforgettable. She swallowed hard. Please, I just want to finish my shift. You will, he said, his voice softer now, yet laced with steel. But understand this. Once someone crosses my path, they don't leave unchanged. Her breath caught. Boss, one of his men interrupted. Are you sure? Letting her. I said silence. Minho's eyes flicked toward them with lethal sharpness before returning to her. Go on. Finish your shift. For now. It wasn't mercy. It was a warning. That night, Chinaza lay awake in her tiny apartment, the image of his eyes refusing to fade. Why hadn't he ordered her dead? Why this strange attention? She had come to Korea with dreams of a better life, but reality had stripped her of hope. And now, fate had entangled her with a man whose world was soaked in blood. Her phone buzzed. A message from her only Nigerian friend in Seoul, Ifeoma. Naz, you okay? You've been quiet. Did something happen? Chinaza typed back. I'm fine. Just tired. But even as she sent it, her hands shook. She wasn't fine. Not anymore. 2 nights later, she was back at the club. Cleaning, serving, avoiding his gaze. But Minho was a storm that couldn't be avoided. Near midnight, a fight broke out between 2 drunk patrons. Shouting. Shattered glass. Chinaza ducked behind the bar, but in seconds, Minho's men had dragged the troublemakers out. Order restored, except Minho's attention landed on her again. He crooked a finger. Come. Every nerve screamed no. But she walked toward him, her legs trembling. He studied her face, as though reading a book written in a language only he understood. Do you fear me? She swallowed. Yes. Good. Fear keeps people alive. He leaned closer, his voice low enough only she could hear. But you don't fear me enough to stay away. Why? Her chest tightened. She wanted to say she had no choice, that poverty chained her here. But instead, words slipped out before she could stop them. Because if I run from every shadow, I'll never survive. For the first time, his expression shifted. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something like curiosity. Maybe even respect. You're different, he murmured. Before she could respond, one of his men rushed in, whispering urgently in his ear. Minho's jaw clenched. He stood, straightening his coat, and in that moment, he was every bit the ruthless boss the city feared. But before he left, he glanced back at her. You. Tomorrow night. My office. His tone left no room for refusal. Chinaza's breath caught. Why? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Because I decide who walks in my shadow. And you, Chinaza, you're already standing there. And with that, he was gone, leaving her heart racing and her world spinning faster into the abyss. The next night came faster than Chinaza wanted. Her shift had barely begun when the manager approached with an unusual stiffness. The boss wants you in his office. Her knees weakened. She wanted to refuse, to run, but refusing Kong Minho wasn't an option. So she climbed the staircase to the 2nd floor, where heavy doors marked his private domain. 2 guards flanked the entrance. They exchanged glances before letting her in. The room was dim, filled with the faint scent of smoke and leather. Bookshelves lined the walls, though they didn't look red, more like trophies. Behind the desk sat Minho himself, sleeves rolled up, revealing veins that mapped power across his forearms. He didn't look up immediately. He was reading a file, his brows slightly furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. When he finally lifted his gaze, the weight of it pinned her to the spot. You came. You ordered, she said quietly, surprising herself with the honesty. A faint smirk tugged at his lips. Sit. She lowered herself into the chair opposite him, gripping the hem of her faded skirt. Her heart raced as silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of the city outside the window. Finally, he set the file aside and leaned forward. Tell me why you're here. Not in this office. In Seoul. She blinked, thrown. I wanted a better life. Better? He gestured around, his tone edged with mockery. Scrubbing floors? Living in a box. That's better? Her throat tightened. It's still more than what I had back home. His eyes sharpened. Nigeria. She nodded. He lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke slowly, his gaze never leaving her. And what did you leave behind there? The question sliced deeper than she expected. Memories clawed at her. The cramped compound in Lagos, her mother's worried face, the man she once loved who had left her for someone richer. Pain, she whispered. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Minho studied her like she was a puzzle no one had solved. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "We are not so different, you and I." Her brows furrowed. "You're a mafia boss. I'm nobody." He gave a humorless laugh. "Nobody." His gaze darkened. "Do you think I was born with power? Respect? I was nothing. Just another unwanted child of a man who had too many sons. I fought for every piece of ground I stand on." His voice carried a rawness she hadn't expected. She leaned forward slightly, caught off guard by the vulnerability beneath his steel. "What happened?" she asked before she could stop herself.
His jaw tightened.
He took another drag of his cigarette, smoke curling around his sharp features. "My father chose my half-brother as his heir. I was discarded, left to rot in the streets. So I built my own empire with blood." Chinaza shivered at the cold finality in his tone. This man had clawed his way out of shadows by becoming the very darkness others feared. "And now," he continued, eyes locking onto hers, "I don't trust anyone. Loyalty is a word men speak before they stab you in the back." Her pulse raced. For the first time, she saw beyond the ruthless boss, the man scarred by betrayal, shaped by abandonment. "I know what that feels like," she whispered. "To give everything and be left with nothing." Their eyes held, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition. A connection forged in wounds. Minho leaned back, extinguishing his cigarette. "That's why I keep you close. Because I can't decide yet if you're a weakness," his lips curved faintly, "or a weapon." Her breath caught. "I don't want to be either." "Then what do you want, Chinaza?" The question hit her chest like a bullet. What did she want? A normal life? Safety? Love? All of it felt impossible in this room with him. "I want to survive," she said finally. He chuckled, low and dark. "Then you've chosen the wrong path, little star." The nickname startled her. "Star?" He gestured lazily.
Chinaza.
The name. It sounds like light. A star in the dark. Her chest tightened unexpectedly at the softness of it, even if his tone was teasing. Before she could respond, the office door burst open. One of his men stumbled in, panting. "Boss, we found a mole. Someone's leaking shipments to the rival clan." Minho's expression hardened instantly, the warmth vanishing like it never existed.
"Who?"
The man hesitated. "It's
June.
from your inner circle." A muscle in Minho's jaw ticked.
June.
His most trusted lieutenant. Chinaza saw it, the flicker of betrayal in his eyes, the way old scars reopened in an instant. "Bring him in," Minho ordered coldly. Minutes later, they dragged June into the office, bloodied and bound. The man pleaded, swearing loyalty, tears streaking his face. But Minho didn't flinch. "You are my brother," he said quietly, voice like a knife. "And you chose money over blood." He drew his gun with terrifying calm, pressing the barrel against June's forehead. Chinaza's breath hitched, horror freezing her in place. "Please," June begged. "It wasn't me."
Bang.
The shot rang out, echoing in the room. June crumpled lifelessly, crimson staining the expensive carpet. Chinaza clapped a hand over her mouth, trembling violently. She had never seen death so close. Minho turned slowly, his expression unreadable. His men didn't even flinch, they were used to this. But his gaze lingered on her, sharp, calculating. "Now you've seen what betrayal costs." Her body shook. "You didn't even give him a chance." "There are no chances in my world." His voice was final, merciless. "Loyalty is proven by blood." Tears stung her eyes, but beneath the terror, something else stirred. Pity. For him. For the boy abandoned, who had learned to kill rather than be killed. And yet, as she looked at him, standing over the corpse without remorse, one truth became clear.
She was already too deep.
The nightclub glittered as if nothing had happened the night before. The music pounded, the patrons laughed, the money flowed, but Chinaza could still smell the gunpowder from Minho's office, could still see June's lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling. Her hands trembled as she wiped down the bar. No matter how much she told herself to quit, her feet kept carrying her back to this place. Back to him. And he was there tonight. Calm Minho sat in the VIP lounge, his usual entourage at his side. But tonight, his eyes found her faster than usual, as if he'd been waiting. When she bent to pick up a glass, his voice cut across the room. Chinaza. Every head turned. The club went quiet for a second. She straightened, heart pounding, tray wobbling in her hands. His gaze pinned her like a blade through silk. Come here. Whispers erupted around her. Some staff exchanged glances, others looked away nervously. To be singled out by the Tiger of Seoul was not normal, it was dangerous. Her legs moved before her mind could argue. She stepped into the VIP area, every breath shallow. Minho gestured to the seat beside him. Sit. I'm working. Sit. His tone left no room for argument. Reluctantly, she lowered herself onto the velvet cushion. The smell of his cologne wrapped around her, intoxicating, suffocating. He poured whiskey into a glass and slid it toward her. Drink. I don't. Drink. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the glass, the liquid burning her throat as it went down. His eyes never left her face, studying her reactions like a scientist with a specimen. You're still afraid of me. She set the glass down carefully. Shouldn't I be? His lips curved faintly.
Yes.
But fear can also mean respect, and respect can turn into loyalty. Before she could answer, a sudden crash shattered the moment. The club doors burst open. Men in leather jackets stormed in, guns flashing under the neon. Screams erupted as patrons ducked for cover. The rival gang, the Black Serpents. Chinaza froze, heart in her throat. Shots fired into the ceiling, glass rained down. Tiger, one of the intruders shouted, "Come out and bleed tonight." Minho rose calmly, like a king rising from his throne. His men immediately drew their weapons, forming a shield around him. But his eyes flicked once to Chinaza, and in that second she knew. She was in danger too. One of the serpents spotted her and smirked. The foreign girl. She's his weakness. The world spun. A gun was suddenly pointed at her chest. Don't move, the man barked. Her knees locked. Terror clawed at her throat. But Minho's voice cut through the chaos, deep and lethal. Point that gun at her again, and you won't live to regret it. The serpent laughed. So it's true. The great tiger keeps pets now. Chinaza's breath hitched. Minho's jaw clenched, fury radiating from him like heat. In one swift movement, he drew his pistol and fired. The serpent dropped instantly, blood pooling on the marble floor. Screams erupted again. The club became chaos, gunfire, shouts, shattering glass. Minho's men clashed with the serpents, bullets flying. Get her out, Minho barked, shoving Chinaza toward one of his guards. But before the man could move her, another serpent lunged from behind, dragging her back by the arm. She screamed, struggling as the man pressed a knife to her throat. Drop your gun, Tiger, or I slit her. Time froze. Chinaza's pulse thundered in her ears. She felt the cold blade bite against her skin, smelled the acrid sweat of her captor. Minho's eyes locked on hers. For the first time, she saw something break through the ice. Panic.
Let
her go, he growled, gun trained on the serpent's head. The man sneered. You don't give orders anymore. She dies, and so does your empire. Blood trickled where the knife pressed too hard. Chinaza whimpered, tears burning her eyes. Don't, she cried. Please. Minho's grip tightened on his gun. His men were frozen, waiting. The entire room held its breath. Then, faster than thought, Minho fired. The bullet struck the serpent clean between the eyes. The man collapsed, dragging Chinaza down with him. She gasped, scrambling free, trembling uncontrollably. In an instant, Minho was at her side, hauling her up. His arms wrapped around her, firm and unyielding. For a brief second, she clung to him, the scent of his cologne mixed with gunpowder filling her lungs. "You're safe," he murmured, voice rougher than she'd ever heard. "I've got you." But the battle wasn't over. More serpents flooded the club, and Minho shoved her toward his guard again. "Take her to the safe house."
Now.
"No," she cried, grabbing his arm. "You'll be killed." His eyes softened, just for her. "Little star, nothing can kill me. Not while you're watching." Then he turned, stepping back into the firefight like a man born of war. Hours later, Chinaza sat trembling in a hidden room miles from the club. Blood stained her sleeve, where the knife had grazed her. She stared blankly at the wall, replaying everything, his voice, his fury, the way he'd risked everything to protect her. When the door finally creaked open, she shot to her feet. Minho entered, his coat streaked with blood, his knuckles raw. Yet his eyes immediately found hers, softer than the rest of him. "You're hurt," he said quietly. "It's nothing." Her voice broke. You killed for me." He stepped closer, lifting her chin gently. His thumb brushed the faint cut on her throat. "I kill for loyalty. But you," his voice dropped, almost a whisper. "You make me want to kill for something else." Her breath caught. "And what's that?" His eyes burned into hers. "Love." The word hung heavy, terrifying and beautiful all at once. But before she could speak, his phone buzzed. He answered sharply, listened, then cursed under his breath. "What is it?" she asked. His gaze hardened. "There's a traitor still alive. Someone inside my circle wants you dead, Chinaza." Her heart sank. She wasn't just caught in his world. She was now a target in it. The safe house was silent, but Chinaza's heart was anything but. It pounded violently as she sat on the edge of the bed, knees pressed to her chest. The words he'd spoken hours ago replayed in her mind. "You make me want to kill for something else."
Love.
She wanted to believe it. She wanted to believe there was something human behind Kong Minho's ruthless mask. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jun's body collapse to the floor. She smelled the smoke of gunfire. She felt the knife slice her skin. And she knew, loving a man like him meant living in the crossfire. The door creaked. She flinched. But it was him. Minho stepped inside, his dark coat dusted with the night air. His face was calm, but his eyes told the truth. They burned with fury and exhaustion. "You should be resting," he said quietly. Chinaza rose to her feet. "And you? Do you ever rest?" His lips curved faintly. "Not in this life." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Why me, Minho? Why protect me? Why pull me into this when you know it could destroy me?" He didn't answer at first. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a blood-stained handkerchief. Slowly, he wiped the faint cut on her throat, his touch gentler than she'd thought possible. "Because you remind me I'm still human," he said at last, voice low. "Because when I look at you, I see the boy I lost before I became the tiger." Her breath caught. "But I can't keep you safe if you stay close to me." His eyes hardened. "Tonight proved that. My enemies will use you until you bleed." Her chest tightened painfully. He was right. Every instinct screamed for her to run, to save herself before this world devoured her. But her heart whispered another truth. "You don't get to decide for me," she whispered. He blinked, surprised. "You think you're the only one who's lost everything?" Chinaza's voice broke, tears brimming. "Back home, I had nothing. Here, I scrape floors for pennies. But with you," she swallowed. "With you, I feel alive, even if it's dangerous. Even if it kills me." For the first time, Minho's composure cracked. His hand trembled as he cupped her face, his forehead pressing against hers. "Your madness," he murmured. "And I can't let you go." The moment shattered with a bang. The safe house door exploded inward, splintering into pieces. Gunfire erupted, bullets shredding the walls. The serpents had found them. Stay down, Min-ho roared, shoving her behind the bed. He drew his pistol in one fluid motion, returning fire with lethal precision. His men rushed in, shouting orders, but the serpents poured through the broken doorway like a tide. Chinaza cowered, heart hammering. The room filled with smoke, chaos, death. And in the middle of it all stood Min-ho, unyielding, merciless, the tiger of Seoul. But then she saw it. A serpent slipping behind him, gun raised. Min-ho, she screamed. Without thinking, she lunged, shoving him aside just as the shot rang out. Pain tore through her shoulder, white-hot and searing. She collapsed, gasping. Chinaza! His voice was raw, almost broken. He fired back instantly, killing her attacker, then dropped to her side. Blood soaked her sleeve, her breath shallow. No, 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 he muttered, pressing his hand over the wound. Stay with me. Don't you dare leave me, little star. She managed a weak smile, teeth stained red. I told you, I'm not afraid. Rage like she'd never seen consumed his eyes. He rose, gun blazing, cutting down every serpent in his path. His men followed, finishing the fight in a storm of bullets. When the smoke cleared, bodies littered the floor, but the tiger still stood. He returned to her side, cradling her carefully in his arms. For once, his hands shook. You saved me, he whispered, disbelief in his voice. Her eyes fluttered. Guess that makes us even. Don't joke, he snapped, but his voice cracked. You don't get to leave me. Not now. Not ever. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Reinforcements. Min-ho carried her out of the wreckage, past the corpses, into the night air. Under the cold stars, he held her close, his lips brushing her forehead. You're mine now, Chinaza, he vowed, voice trembling with an emotion he rarely let himself feel. No matter what it takes, I'll build a world where no one can touch you. I'll burn this city, to the ground if I must. Her eyes met his, weak but steady. And I'll walk with you, even in the shadows. Something inside him broke, and healed at the same time. He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, tasting blood and tears, but also something he had thought he'd lost forever.
Hope.
And as the night closed around them, the tiger of Seoul realized one truth he could no longer deny. For all his empire of blood and power, it was this poor Nigerian woman who had conquered him. Not with fear, not with betrayal, but with love.